and welcome back to another video. My name is Steph. I'm going to start the video off by sharing some of my recommendations, and then towards the end of the video I'm going to chat a little bit about the books that I want to rate my TBR. I'm going to organize them by genre. You can navigate using the little timestamps below, but without further ado, I have my chocolate hazelnut tea. Let's get into some recommendations. The first book that I think is absolutely perfect for this winter season is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This one is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. It takes place kind of in an ambiguous historical setting, like it's not quite medieval. I really couldn't tell you exactly when it's supposed to be. And it's sort of drawing a lot on Polish folklore. This book follows Miriam, who is quite poor until she mysteriously gains a reputation for turning silver into gold. This draws the attention of like icy fae creatures called the Starrick, I don't know how to pronounce it. And things kind of unfold from there. I really love how she does the characters in this book. You get a lot of really great POV, especially from women, and it's overall just super atmospheric. It's definitely my most favorite Rumpelstiltskin retelling of them all, and definitely my favorite by Naomi Novik as well. The second book that I would love to recommend to you is Sky in the Deep. This is by Adrienne Young, and I feel like not that many people actually talk about it, but I liked it way more than Fable. It is a YA, and it's like very heavily inspired by Vikings. We follow Aelin, who is pretty much part of like a Viking clan. She wields an axe, but one day they are attacked by an opposing clan, and during battle, she thinks that she spots her brother, died like 5 or 6 years ago. During that battle, she's also taken captive and forced to live among the enemy in one of their homes as a servant for a whole winter. And so a lot of the book is her trying to survive this winter, trying to navigate this life in a Viking village and understanding some of the magic and the lore and some of the politics of the region. There's a small bit of romance as well, and I really just had so much fun reading this. I think I read it in like a day. The next book that I am so excited to recommend to you is A Day of Fallen Night. Now, I actually just finished this morning, and so this is a perfect opportunity for me to be talking about it. But A Day of Fallen Night is set in the same world as Priory of the Orange Tree, except this one is the prequel. You can really read them in any order. And the whole idea behind this series that Samantha Shannon has created, it is sort of a retelling of St. George and the Dragon, but also kind of in dialogue with the original myth and like the original characters, because St. George, if you actually like learn about him, he's kind of like a shitty guy. So in A Day of Fallen Night, if you've read the first book, is accounting a time period called the Great Sorrow. We follow, I think, 4 main point of view characters who are all kind of at different stages, and like 3 out of 4 are women. It's a very complicated story to actually explain in short, but pretty much there are 2 kinds of dragons. There's the water dragons that are very much inspired by Asian style dragons, and then there are the fire dragons that are more of like the earth and have kind of a different type of magic. And these dragons, the more Western style dragons, are evil. In the books, there is like the nameless one, this really big evil dragon who is only kept at bay and in this sort of continuous slumber. And different parts of the world have different beliefs or understandings about what is keeping this evil dragon at slumber. There's one part of the world where they believe that it's only when a queen of this certain bloodline stays on the throne. There's another that believes, you know, something completely different, and others who... So it's a very political kind of book, and I think it would really appeal to anybody who is interested in court politics. But the reason that it's on this list today is that we finally get the map expanded a little bit more from book 1. Book 1 is set primarily in a place that's a lot like the British Isles, and this one expands out to follow a couple of characters who are from the north. And so we spend a lot of time in like mountain shrines and flying on the back of dragons at very high altitudes and in the snow. And it's so atmospheric. This book is almost 900 pages, but for me, it is kind of also the perfect time around winter to snuggle up with a blanket and get through some of those big fantasy novels. Okay, I think that the next book is kind of fun to have on this list. Even though it's not really maybe my favorite, I do think that it is a little bit less talked about, which is why I'm including it, and that is Ledge. I just finished the sequel of this book and really enjoyed it a lot more than I was anticipating. This is like a romantic fantasy, so it's definitely more fantasy leaning, especially in the second book, but in the first book as well. We follow a young woman named Dawson who lives on the ledge. And this ledge is glacial, like very cold, very miserable place and very difficult to survive. And it's right on the edge of a chasm, and there's just a small community of people who are just trapped there. And she's been on the ledge her entire life. And what is really terrifying about the ledge is that every so often there are men with wings in this book, but I don't mind that actually, called the Glacians. And what is so terrifying about these creatures is that they kind of swoop in and take people, and presumably everybody who is captured by them dies a really horrific death. And so of course one day Dawson is taken, and while she's being held captive by these Glacians, she has to find a way to survive, and that can only be done by teaming up with Ryan. It's like Brian, but with an O. And their adventure unfolds from there. Okay, 3 books left on my recommendations. 2 are sort of like sci-fi horror. So of course, one has to be Frankenstein. This is one of my all-time favorite novels, and we follow Victor Frankenstein, who is a student of science. And he wants to basically be amazing and create life. Of course, he manages to do that by stitching together dead bodies, and he creates his monster. This book begins and ends on the tundra, and I just feel like the emotion in it so well embodies some of the themes that are more common in like darker books as you watch Frankenstein and his monster kind of destroy each other. My other sci-fi book that I want to recommend is The Left Hand of Darkness. This is really good if you're looking for kind of an atmospheric, maybe a bit of a slower read that is really character driven. So we follow a human, like an ambassador, to a planet that is like icebound. And there he encounters the inhabitants of this place, who are gender fluid and have a really different idea of sexuality and identity. And a lot of this book is like them traveling across the tundra, having these conversations with one another on a sledge, getting to know and understand how their experiences and way of viewing the world differ and overlap. And the shortest book on this list is a graphic novel. That is Snow Glass Apple by Neil Gaiman. This is so beautiful. This is a retelling of Snow White, of course, where Snow White princess is the one that is so monstrous, and the queen is actually truly the victim here. Okay, now I need a sip of tea. The TBR will be shorter. That might be a lie. Number 1 on my TBR is The Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. Now, this is part of the Discworld novels, and I know I probably can't start here, but I would really, really like to get into them. And The Hogfather is following the character Death. So the Hogfather is supposed to be a Father Christmas type of character, and he goes missing for some reason. And so Death, who is also a character, tries to fill in for him while they try and find the Hogfather. This series is like known to be quite like absurdist and quite funny, and I absolutely love Good Omens, and so I would just really, really enjoy getting into some of his books. And this feels like such a nice one to kind of like work my way towards. Now, I also want to read The Snow Child, and I feel like this is kind of a classic for these winter TBR videos. In it, we follow a childless couple who live in Alaska in the 1920s, and they are going through kind of a rough patch until they meet this little girl in the snow, and their lives are changed by knowing her and understanding like where she came from and who she is. I think this is fantasy. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it is fantasy or like a magical realism kind of book, but the description is quite vague, so I really don't completely know what I'm getting into here. Next up is Eileen, and now this book I actually started to read this morning, and this is gonna be the second Tessa Moshfegh book that I've ever read. And if you don't know, Moshfegh has a reputation for writing these very unlikable and sometimes quite disgusting or repulsive characters, and really getting deeply into their internal worlds and point of view. And so I think I am about almost 20% of the way through, and I think I'm enjoying it a bit more than Rest and Relaxation, but definitely there is an element to her writing that is fantastic, but also repulsive. In it, we follow a woman in her 20s who works at a prison for boys, and she apparently runs away from home in the days leading up to Christmas. That's all I know. Also on my list is Beartown by Frederick Backman. I have not read any Backman before. I don't tend to gravitate to wholesome books or like very emotional and moving books, but the environment of this book has me wanting to give it a shot. It follows a community in a small town that is like kind of hockey crazy, and particularly follows a group of people who are connected to a hockey team and how the community handles, I believe that there's going to be like an assault or something. Something is going to happen, and it involves a young woman, and then we kind of see how the events play out from there. But yeah, I don't completely know, but I am very, very curious. Now, I have two thrillers that I would love to get to, although at the length of this list, I really don't know if I'm gonna have the time. But the first one is Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger. The setup of this kind of reminds me a little bit of Into the Woods. It begins in the days leading up to Christmas, and there's a young woman who lives in a smaller town and runs a bookstore there, and something kind of traumatic happened in her childhood. And she has kind of put that behind her, or at least doesn't think about it super regularly, until another woman who is a true crime podcaster and failed novelist starts coming around and asking her questions about her friend who was allegedly killed by some guy. So I don't know a whole lot about it, but I am definitely looking forward to just reading a thriller that is set around Christmas, and I'll let you know how that goes. The other thriller that I would like to read over the winter season is Breathless. The only thing I really know about this is that it seems to be centered on a group of people who are climbing a mountain, and then it becomes a bit of a locked room situation where there's a killer on the mountain and people are dying, and we have to figure out who it is before it's too late. So I think that will be really interesting. I am definitely really curious. The cover looks very atmospheric, so let me know if you've read it, because I don't really know anything else. Now, I read In a Holidays last year, and that should have been on my recommendation actually. I had so much fun reading it, and I should have realized that this would be something that I would enjoy because of how much I love the movie The Holiday. So this year, I definitely want to set aside a little bit of time to kind of just enjoy a little bit of those Christmas romance books. Particularly, 'Tis the Season for Revenge. Now, this book is about a young woman who is a people pleaser, and she gets dumped by her boyfriend. And so leading up to Christmas, she plans her best revenge, which is apparently dating his boss. And that sounds great. That's why I'm reading the book. That's all I know. That's all I needed to know. I bought the ebook already. Now, the other one that I want to read is Love Light Farms. This one just keeps coming up, and it was only until like 30 minutes ago when I was reading the synopses for these books that I realized that this might be a friends to lovers, and I don't usually like those, because like if you've been friends forever and you're only getting together now, like what were you doing this whole time? Like there just has to be a very good justification for it to make sense to me. But this is like a fake dating and friends to lovers book, and I think that there is a Christmas tree farm involved as well. But again, I really don't know. I'm purely giving it a try because I've seen it floating around so much and so many people seem to love it. So that's my list. I would love to hear about the books that you're planning to read this year. If you have any suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments. I would love to chat with you there. And if not, thanks for watching this video, and have a great morning, evening, afternoon, whatever, wherever you are. Bye.